Now, let's consider two types of mistakes that can occur when a manager actually starts to set up a duplicate system to replicate a successful process. Firstly, perhaps he forgets that he was just trying to copy another process and starts trying to improve on it. Another mistake is trying to use the best parts of various different systems in the hope of creating the perfect combination. Unfortunately, attempts like these usually turn out to be misguided and lead to problems. Why? Well, for various reasons. Perhaps there weren't really any advantages after all, because the information wasn't accurate. Or perhaps the business settings weren't really comparable. More typically, the advantages are real enough, but there are also disadvantages that have been overlooked. For example, the modification might compromise safety in some way. So what's the solution? Well, I don't intend to suggest that it's easy to get things right the second time. It's not. But the underlying problem has more to do with attitudes than the actual difficulty of the task, and there are ways of getting it right. These involve adjusting attitudes, being more realistic and cautious, really. I've been looking at ocean biodiversity. That's the diversity of species that live in the world's oceans. Biologists still don't know how serious the threat to their survival is for each individual species. So a body called the Global Marine Species Assessment is now creating a list of endangered species on land. So they consider things like the size of the population, how many members of one species there are in a particular place, and then they look at their distribution in geographical terms, although this is quite difficult when you're looking at fish, because they're so mobile. And then thirdly, they calculate the rate at which the decline of the species is happening. So far, only 1,500 species have been assessed, but they want to increase this figure to 20,000. For each one they assess, they use the data they collect on that species to produce a map showing its distribution. So finally, what can be done to retain the diversity of species in the world's oceans? Firstly, we need to set up more reserves in our oceans, places where marine species are protected. We have some, but not enough. In addition, to preserve species such as leatherback turtles, we need to create corridors for migration, so they can get from one area to another safely.
It's easy to think that humans are the only species that have true friendships, but animals make friends too. What do we know about these friendships?
Well, we thought for a long time that animals only have friends for biological reasons, so their genes will continue. After all, it's easier for animals to survive with the help of another animal. We thought that animals only helped each other to get help in return. But there's growing evidence that tells us this isn't true. Animals can also be generous and give up something important for a friend without expecting anything back from them, just like humans.
And what about friendships between animals from different species?
Like the bird that looked after the cat, you mean? Those friendships are very interesting. We actually know very little about them at the moment, but we're starting to look at them more closely.
We all know that journalists often make things sound worse than they are, but they aren't the only ones. It seems that scientists sometimes do it too. In the past, scientists have claimed that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that's the area in the Pacific Ocean where plastic waste has collected together to create one kind of big garbage island. Anyway, they have claimed that this area of garbage is twice the size of the state of Texas, or 20 times the size of England. Some scientists even said that there's more plastic in that ocean than plankton. That's the tiny animals and plants that fish eat. But a new report shows that while there is a very serious problem for the environment, it's not as great as many scientists have said. The research showed that the garbage covers an area that's much smaller than Texas. And while plastic can harm some sea life, it actually feeds other tiny living creatures. For this reason, the report concludes that we shouldn't try to remove the plastic, but should focus on stopping more garbage from entering the ocean so it doesn't get worse in the future.